Hello and welcome. I am the Suit&Tie Dip&ChewGuy, and this is a Nerf video. This is Nerf internals for Nerf Retaliators, Recon Mark IIs, or Prophecy Rs made by Worker. All right. So I will be laying out basically what's inside these particular blasters, but for someone that's never opened up a blaster, it will show you basically the general idea. It is important to note, just in case someone that is more in the know than myself shows up in the comment thread watching the video, that I am not the end-all expert of Nerf or dart blasters. I'm not pretending to be. I am not suggesting that I am. All right? This is just expanded content for my viewers. All right? So if you are more in the know than myself and you have something constructive to say, by all means. But don't look at the video as, oh, well, this guy's pretending to. I'm not pretending to do anything. I don't do pretend. All right? So with that, I'm going to walk off screen here, change the angle of the camera, and we will get into this. For this video, as the demonstration blaster, I will be using a Recon Mark II. They are very similar to Retaliators and Prophecy Rs. With that, see you in a minute. Okay, so what we have here is the blaster's up here, but this is what you're going to be seeing inside of it. And I'm just going to go over quickly as to what it is. So you have the bolt and sled. All right. This is what when you prime the blaster, this is what is sliding back to cock it and sliding forward to put the dart in place. You then have the tube. This is the plunger and tube. This is the tube part. The plunger and spring, okay? And then this right here is the catch. This is what catches the plunger and spring when it comes back. And this is what is moved up by the trigger when you pull the trigger, releasing the plunger. Plunger going forward, propelled by the spring down the tube, which sends air down the bolt, the blue part here. Dart sitting in front of this in the barrel being propelled out, okay? So, what does that look like in practice? Move these out of the way here. This is a Nerf Recon Mark II. This is not the branded side of it. It is on this side because I have the bolts loose, the screws loosened already. It is a Hasbro line product that may or may not be out of production at the moment. All right. It is top prime. This yellow right here, you cock back, you cock forward. All right. When you cock it back, it's pushing the bolt back and the plunger and the spring. And when you bring it forward, it chambers, if you want to call it that, the next dart. Okay, so taking one of these apart. For the stock, it's these two little tabs and a pull-off. Then that. Then the mag release. It's a six dart magazine that comes with it. This right here is what your actual blaster is. Everything else is just sort of add-ons. This is the blaster. So what you have on this is you have an end cap. Now usually there are two screws going in the end that hold this in place. I have them removed at the moment. So it should just slide off. All right. And then I will loosen the two screws that I have tightened on it, holding together at the moment, and I have the wrong end on there, of course, so I'm going to have to switch out bits. There we go. Now, I do want to apologize if not all the angles are right here. This is a very new setup for me, which I am not used to. So on the Retaliator, it's about the same as this, only this bolt up here, these bolts are covered by the prime mechanism, all right? So there are quite a number of screws. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on the body proper, and then 2 more making 12 on the priming action, which I'm not quite sure if you can see there. They're right there. It also has a post that goes through somewhere right about here, which is difficult to pry apart at times, and which is what is giving me the problem right now, I think. Yep. There we go. Okay. So inside the gun, excuse me, that's what you're looking at. Okay? So you have the bolt sled right here. When you prime it back with the yellow here, the bolt sled pushes into the tube and pushes the plunger back. Along with the plunger goes the spring right here. It then catches on this, the catch plate, and then you bring the bolt sled back forward and it chambers the dart. All right? The catch plate release is done by the trigger. You bring the trigger back here and it pushes this up, releases the plunger, which shoots down the tube and sends air down the bolt. Your dart is sitting up in this section right here. Okay? So I am going to switch this out. The blue parts that you see here are actually upgraded, well, I consider upgraded parts. They're not, you know, anything high value, but they are upgrades. For instance, this tube is padded at the front, which is why it looks white up here. And this spring is more than double the resistance power of the one that comes in Hasbro products. So in Recons and Retaliators, the spring is a 2.5 kg spring, all right? This one is a 7. Oh, and I'm out of the camera, I'm sorry. All right, it's a 7, and since it's going to be adding a lot of extra power, sending the plunger down the tube, having a padded tube is a good thing. Now, let's pull this out. Okay, so that's the catch plate. Stock tube and plunger. The bolt and sled. Now I am switching out the bolt as well. As you can see, all the blue parts here are basically worker. And this one does not have an air restrictor in it. You can see right down it. This one does. You will get a slight increase in feet per second without the air plunger. Basically, inside here was stock, except for, you can see this right here, I've already reinforced, it's super glued in, and this post right here has been reinforced with a, I don't know what to call it, I don't want to call it duct tape. It's been bound, okay? So other things that will change here are the catch plate on Hasbro stuff is plastic. I will be switching to a metal for strength. So let's get the prime back. The other parts here are the nozzle, which I am also using with Worker, actually, to tell you the truth. Okay? And that is the jam door. That's in case you get any jams you can access from the top. All right? When you open your blaster up, there will be a number of locks that have already been removed from this. They'll be in this area here. I've pulled them out. And this area here. All right? They're not needed, so they're gone. At some point, if there's questions about that, I will show what it looks like with the blaster having them in. At the moment, though, we'll just be going over the main parts. So you have the nozzle, okay? Bolt sled and bolt sled. So the bolt sled has 2 holes in either side of it. They are what go on the posts for the primer, the priming handle, okay? So you want to make sure they're on. There's also a track here that the bolt sled rides on. So putting it in on that post, if you can see, the handle is moving, all right? So it goes up into the nozzle, okay? When you cock the priming handle back, it comes back into the plunging tube and pushes back the plunger, which is on the spring, and it cocks the spring as well. It then catches the catch plate, which holds it all back. So let's move that up. It's on its slide. You then have the tube. You're going to put this in next. This square box on the tube goes to the bottom of the blaster, all right? There are posts on the side. They sit in a center channel right here. So what you have to do here is you have to slip the end of the bolt, which has an O-ring on it, which should be lubed, onto the tube. And this one is actually going to need lube. I usually use Orange ModWorks white lithium grease, which is what you're looking at right now. I'm going to take this out, lube the end. I'm going to lube it up pretty good because evidently this thing, some of these parts, I'm working off a short part list. I don't have a lot of parts in right now at the moment. So some of these have never been used. I just broke them out of packaging. And I'm sort of short in a couple areas of things, which is why I got things sort of pieced together. But I decided to go ahead with this video anyway because I've been promising it for so long. So it fits in like that, all right? This box right here this blocky bit going to the bottom. So let me get this back in to the blaster. Bolt sled is in. And now the tube is also set. So the tube should be sitting right at the end of this white plastic wall right here, all right? You need room for the catch plate to go in behind it. I'll put the catch plate in first here. All right. I'm going to put the spring, the upgraded 7 kg spring, on the plunger. I'm going to lube the plunger's O-ring, and I hope I'm not going too far out of camera here. You're all sitting there going, man, I can't wait for this to be over. And you know what? Don't feel bad, because I'm thinking the same thing. Okay. So now you have the new drivetrain basically in there. All right. So you're going to make sure that your catch plate is sitting in. You're going to get, because I had to take it out, your priming handle post onto, oh, come on, come on, come on. There we go. You're going to make sure that's sliding. Okay, so when you cock this back, they call it a top prime because it's on the top. When you cock this back, this is going back and pushing the plunger down the tube and cocking this spring. All right? So let's pull that back forward. All right, so now you have the sled and the bolt sled and the bolt, the plunger tube, the tube with the spring on the end. You are going to set the spring into its channel for the trigger. All right. So when the trigger comes back, this little triangle at the end here will push up on the catch plate, and the catch plate is on a spring also. It will go up and release the plunger back down the tube, the plunger being propelled by the spring. All right? And basically that's all you got going on. When you open one of these up the first time, it's going to look very like, oh my God, what have I just done? Am I going to be able to put this back together? Now, to me, it's all very, very simple. This is a direct plunger system. There are indirects on other types of Nerf guns, but this is the most basic design Hasbro has come up with, and it's probably the most used, in my opinion, or most used by people at least. In general, when you open it up, it looks overly complicated because it's new to you, but there's a lot going on right here with the locks for the magazine release, and there's a lot going on up here for basically something that opens up or holds open the door. The nozzle has a little flap door, so you can't shove other stuff besides darts down it to fire out of the gun. And they have these locks and levers in here. Once you remove them out, it's not really complicated. You have a nozzle, a bolt sled, the bolt on the sled, the tube, the plunger going into the tube, and the spring on the end of the plunger. When you cock the top prime back, you're moving the sled back and the bolt goes into the tube, pushes the plunger back. The plunger catches on the catch here that's in metal now, and it stays there under pressure from the spring until you release it by pushing the catch up by pulling the trigger. When you move the bolt back to do all of that, the next dart, because this is actually sitting something like this, is chambered when the bolt comes back into the nozzle because they're under pressure from a spring in here. The hardest thing about the whole deal is really getting it back together because there's a lot of parts under pressure from springs. The catch plate has a spring. It's under pressure. You have the obvious main spring. The trigger has a spring. And there's a lot of stuff that wants to not stay where you have it. And, you know, it's just something that, you know, you will get it. It will get easier. Sometimes I found that early on, I was a little bit too light of touch. I was afraid of doing something wrong, so I was going a little light. Now, you know, I probably won't do it on this video for sake of time, but there's not anything now that I'm really worried about, and this will go back together in, you know, a couple minutes flat. But again, because this is about you knowing, nozzle, bolt sled, bolt in blue here, tube, plunger in the tube, spring on the end of the plunger, catch plate, and trigger for release. All right. When you top prime it back, the sled slides back. The only other thing that's really difficult about this is getting the other post that's on the underside of this. I got a bunch of screws in it, so I'm not going to flip it over. The post that's on the underside of this part, getting that in that hole. I usually look up the mag well to try to get that lined up. All right? When you prime it back, you're sending the sled back. The bolt goes back into the tube, pushes the plunger back, which is under pressure because this spring will be in this end white bit. It won't be coming out this far. The spring will end right here. It pushes that back, and the lip on the plunger catches this catch plate. You then slide back forward to chamber the dart, and you're ready to fire as soon as you pull the trigger, which pushes this catch plate up and releases the plunger, shooting forward, down the tube, which sends air, down the bolt, which propels the dart out of the gun. So a standard FPS for a blaster like this, just, you know, out of the box, stock, is, if you're lucky, you might be able to get 70 feet per second. With what I just did here, this will be most likely firing at least probably 95 to 105. All right? Mostly due to the spring. But workers' tubes are a little bit, slightly more air capacity, I believe, inside the tube. All right? And there being no air restrictor. So, with that, I'm going to wrap this up, I think. And that is the Nerf internals video. So, obviously, I am pretty new to trying to do something like this, like the video aspect. So, you know, I'm using a table that's shaking. I am trying to get myself used to the idea of how to explain this, which may or may not have worked out. But this is basically a first run. When I get further into it's basically, this is to show you, give you an idea, all right? And for me to practice. This is a type of video that I plan when I'm better at the camera usage, angles, equipment, on redoing, to be truthful. Again, though, as far as the blasters go, if you have a Prophecy R, which is a worker, which most of you probably don't, but if you have a Retaliator, which some of you may have, or a Recon Mark II, it's going to look complicated at first, but don't be like, oh, wow, kids are going to be angry. You can't get this back together. Nah, it'll be fine. I find it enjoyable to work on these. I'm not very far along. I've had an interest for a couple of years in them due to my nephews, but I haven't actually been opening anything up and working it or buying like high-powered blasters. it's only been about 8 months or something like that I've actually been tweaking with them, you know, and changing things, buying parts, stuff like that. So it's again for anybody that is well in the know, I am not putting myself out like that. I am just sharing what I do know and trying to practice in the way that I share that. Anyway, I do hope you all are well. I hope this has been some enlightenment on the subject. I will be returning with possibly some news or ideas rather on the community page during my off time week. All right? So do take care of yourselves, and as always, God bless.